Some men couldn't bring home any meat for the children, and his woman left him and went into another man's hut. The rest of the tribe ostracized him. Nothing's really changed. We still have that primitive brain. Humans may have changed, but not as much as you think. For the next 3 harsh truths, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna write them out so you can follow along. 2 harsh truth I wish I had known as a man in my 20s was that at the end of the day, it's all just confidence. You might think that the person born in the right place, or the person who works the hardest, or the person who's most skilled. No, it will be confidence that's the core predictor of your total success. So, your big regrets when you're 60 years old, 80 years old, if you don't watch this video, your biggest regret, you will look back and you will say, if only I had been more confident about my business ideas. If only I'd been more confident about my social skills. If only I'd been more confident about my looks, about my height, about my appearance. Men nowadays are getting thrown off because you're seeing on social media the best looking dudes all over the feed, theoretically getting all the best looking women. But I will tell you, when it comes to making money, confidence wins. When it comes to women, confidence wins. I remember I used to do a party up in the Hollywood Hills, and there was the prettiest woman who ever came in 6 years of me throwing parties. Was with a guy. At first, I was like, this must be her gay agent or something, because he was 6 inches shorter than her. She was like a blonde, Swedish, natural beauty, and he was like this little Latino guy. And I remember at some point realizing, no, this woman likes him, and he didn't have money. Confidence beats even money. Now, yes, money to get the girl is a powerful tool, but not as much as confidence. I know a guy, I have my private client program, I work with people anywhere from 50 million to 500 million and beyond net worth. And I can think of multiple guys that have money. One's making $1 million a week net in his pocket after taxes. He's like, Tai, I can't get a woman. I'm not confident enough. So even money can't make up for a lack of confidence. So what you have to know is know your strengths, and then in those areas you're strong in, have infinite confidence. Not just confidence, but infinite. Assume you're right, but I want to give a disclaimer. This is not an excuse to become a know-it-all. You should not become confident in areas that are not your strength. I like what Warren Buffett says. He says, I have a small circle of competence, and I stay in that circle. So you should only have massive confidence in those areas that you can ascertain are your areas of expertise. For me, marketing, I know I can make things go viral. Business, I know I can do those things. There's some things, I played basketball at one of the top high school in the US, Enloe, in Raleigh, North Carolina. But I don't have infinite confidence in basketball because it's not my circle of competence. But I know what mine is. And you might say, but Tai, what if I don't have a circle of competence? Create one. You better create one, my brother. It's the confident that end up winning. And if you look at the last election, what do you see? Some people say, well, this person has more skill in government. Yeah, but that's not how this world works. Humans are hardwired at the genetic level to look for somebody who can get them out of the darkness, who can lead them into the light, whether it's military, whether it's business, whether it's family. Everybody's looking for a confident leader. You can be a quiet, confident leader, an introverted, confident leader. You can be a loud mouth. You can talk all the time and yap all the time. None of those factors matter. Those are just modalities. Modalities don't really matter. It's the core substance underneath. On a 1 to 100, what's the confidence level you project? And I will tell you, the thing that's throwing men off is the comparative chart to extreme outliers that you see on social media. So dudes are no longer confident in their looks because as they scroll, they see, supermodel dudes. But I'm gonna tell you something. Once again, as a man, it's different than if you were a woman. But as a man, women have slightly bizarre brains when it comes to attraction. They can lose attraction for the greatest supermodel guy if he projects low confidence. Men are like that. If men meet a very beautiful woman who's shockingly beautiful, then they'll go to their friends, you know what? Little low self-esteem. I'm not gonna go out with her again. That's rarely come out of any man's mouth if the woman's truly beautiful. Men will stick with a beautiful woman if she's confident or not confident. So it's a much more of a binary modality for women. But for men, there's all these shades of gray. All you need to do is be decent looking, decently dressed, but be a 9 or a 10 out of 10 on confidence. And you cover all your mistakes and all your flaws. Now, I just want to give you one disclaimer. I'm not saying all problems will be solved. I'm not saying that all women will love you if you're confident. No, there is a section of women that only like the best looking men. Those are not on the table for you. Your genetics, my genetics, we didn't get that card. But there's still the other at least 50% of the world where women don't think that way. So when it comes to love, when it comes to money, when it comes to social skills, fake it till you make it. When it comes to confidence, just fake it. Just fake it. Because humans crave congruency. If you begin to fake a confident person, eventually you hardwire your mind to be more confident. Eventually. Practice not only makes perfect in sports, but it also makes perfect when you're becoming more confident. Think about it. Do we say fake it till you make it when you're playing sports? If you're practicing football, soccer, basketball, and you're not that good, do people go, oh, look at that dude faking it till he makes it? Yeah, that's what practice is. You're faking it. Kobe Bryant, I got to interview him before he sadly died, and he was telling me about how he had mentors and how he would practice shooting with no ball. He was faking it because he was rewiring the underlying apparatus of the brain. So confidence, the antidote is essentially faking it. And eventually it'll be real. Eventually it'll be real. Okay. The third harsh truth. The world will tell you that the man who shows his emotion, who expresses his emotion, who's in touch with his emotions is the man that you should look up to. But when you look at the behavior of society, it doesn't. It doesn't. It looks to the man who stoically endures the trials unflinchingly. It looks to the man who's not easily bothered. Doesn't matter what modern society thinks. I like what Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, the billionaire, said. Charlie Munger said, when life goes bad for you, something horrible, you lose a friend, a family member. He said, you take your time of grief, you cry about it for 3 days, and then you bury it deep within you and don't let it come out again. Now, some people will try to argue and say, no, suppressing never works. Well, I think if you look at the evidence at how a man's brain is built, men have a brain higher on psychopathy. It's hardwired that way. I have a company, 12 Types. I've tested over 500,000 people in over 100 countries. And consistently men, on something called the Levinson psychopathy test, men score relatively high comparatively to women. So what happens is with men and women as a unit raising a child, the woman is expressing the emotions generally more. They're much lower on Levinson's. Often women get a 0 or a 1 on the Levinson psychopathy test. And most dudes get at least baseline of 20 to 30. So 1 to 20, I mean, you're talking about 10x, 20x, 30x, okay? And so you might say, but no, a baby, a child, a society needs people who are emotional. Yeah, that's why it's split. That's why we have evolved as a split sex society, male, female. This happened. Sexual reproduction is a novel thing. Not all species have sexual reproduction. Ferns don't. Earthworms don't. But humans split the task of life. The woman would take the more empathetic activities. The man would take the more suppressive. The man doesn't talk as much. Testosterone makes a man speak less. Dr. Helen Fisher, she's actually the head chief scientist for Tinder and Match.com. It's interesting. She has more data on male-female interaction than any scientist in history. She's been a mentor of mine for 9 years. And one of the things she said, a classic symptom of high testosterone is less expression, less talking. She said the highest testosterone men in America are lumberjacks in Alaska. They're on oil rigs out in the middle of the ocean. They're not actors. They're not public speakers. Now, does that mean you can't be good at speaking and have high testosterone? No, that's not what it means. It's a general pattern. Men are built on day one to suppress emotions more than women. Now, there's exceptions to this. Men who go to war in World War II, for example, before we really understood PTSD, men suffered, okay? But even with all that we have now, men who go to war still suffer. There's still PTSD. There's also, though, resiliency levels within men. So there's subgroups of men
who have no PTSD. None. They're shocked. They come out and like, I saw a video with a guy from World War I. And he's like, they're like, how many people did you shot? He's like, oh no, I lost track at 100. And he said, do you ever lose sleep? He said, never lost sleep. He's like, I was there to do a job. They were attacking us. They started it. I went to finish it. Never lost. Now you might think he's lying. I don't. Men, if you take 1,000 men versus 1,000 women, the amount of people affected by traumatic things in general is going to be lower for men. Dr. Buss has some interesting, if you want to see the science on this, in his textbook Evolutionary Psychology, where he talks about battle scenes. Women faint more than men. Women faint more than men. And part of the reason is, think about the evolution of genes. Men who fainted in battle because there was too many people, too much, dying, too much brutality. Well, when the enemy walked in, they just speared everybody to death. So the men who were overly expressive of their emotions, their gene pool's been eliminated. We know this now. The Y chromosome studies look and have found a shocking statistic that all the humans on Earth today, all 8 billion plus, descend from only 40% of men in our ancestral past. 40. 60% of men did not reproduce successfully. That group of 40% was a lot of men who knew how to suppress their emotions when the time was right. I don't want you, though, to take this and say you should always suppress your emotions. When my grandma died, she was 102. She died. I've never in my entire life given a speech, even at other people's funerals, where I couldn't talk. My grandma was like a once in a lifetime, grief event. And I think it's fine, that you're crying there. But so I'm saying the general pattern should be men should be more suppressive of emotions. Like Charlie Munger says, something, life hits you hard, you cry about it for 3 days, and then you bury that deep within you. You lose all your money, you cry about it for 3 days, you write down everything, you let your emotions out, and then you suppress. And you say, never again, never again. The man who suppresses his emotions, the man who's confident in his skill set, and the man who realizes he has to make money, well, you're about 75% of the way there. So the last one, the fourth harsh truth I wish I had been told as a man in my 20s, is that it matters where you live, and you better pick it logically, methodically, and well. Good example, Jeff Bezos, when he was at the inception point building Amazon to eventually become a $1 trillion company, he pulled out a spreadsheet and he analyzed every city in the United States. He analyzed what had the most nonstop flights, what had the lowest state tax income rate, what had the best other companies attracting talent so he could poach their best employees into his office down the street. And he triangulated at that time that it was Seattle, Washington. No tax. Microsoft, Bill Gates was already there. West Coast, decent weather, could attract. He had a long spreadsheet. When I meet the average man, and even when I think back on my own life, I'm like, did I spend 50 hours analyzing and thinking about where I live, or did I just do it by chance? Because I had a friend here and this, and I had a whim one day. Don't be that guy. Where you live will determine, in great part, your capacity. So, what I mean, if you live in a place, let's say you determine that an average place to live, not your best place, but a decent place is Raleigh, North Carolina. That's where I lived. But if you have thought a little deeper, let's say you would have determined that, Los Angeles would actually meet the criteria of what you need. But you stay in Raleigh because you haven't learned this harsh truth, and you've been taught that, you can shine and wherever you are, and the cream will rise to the top. What will happen in Raleigh, North Carolina, you'll put in the same units of life energy over the next 10, 20 years, but you're capped. You're capped. And so your results per unit of brain damage, per unit of work, is primarily capped by where you live. By the way, included in this harsh truth is you better live in the right place if you want to find a woman. You better live in the right place, because all cities are not created the same. All countries are not created the same. One of the parts of this harsh truth, this fourth one, has more layers to it than you realize. Cultures aren't the same. They're not the same. I'm not going to say which one's better and which one's worse, but they're different. You live in Brazil, you're gonna live in a culture that values family. If you want a woman to raise a traditional family with, why are you in New York City? What are you doing? You can work hard and go on dates and, oh, but Tai, I can build a filter. I can build a funnel on Tinder and I can filter it. No, you can't. That's not how the game works. That is too much confidence. Don't be delusional. I want you to be confident on things that are realistic. You will not find the needle in the haystack. That's why it's called the needle in the haystack. Imagine you take a teeny needle that you sew with and you drop it in a big pile of hay. I got a barn, it's 100 by 100. If I drop a needle in there, I'll give you $10,000. I'll give you $1 million. If you can find it, I'll give you all year to look for it. I'm saying you can't have a magnet. You're not gonna be able to find in a haystack? No. So I meet men who go, well, it doesn't matter where I live. There's good women everywhere. I didn't say good. I'm gonna forget good. You want a family woman? There's not family women in New York and LA in the dating market. It attracts highly ambitious women who have an agenda. And that agenda is specifically not settling down. So why are you there? Now, if you're a dude who never wants to have a family, never wants to have a kid, maybe big cities move to the top of the food chain. You want to make money? You think every place has the same capacity? No, because your network will be weak. I was talking to a dude who's like in Winnipeg, Canada or something, and he wants to make big money. Nothing wrong with being in Winnipeg, but this guy wants to make $1 billion. I was like, what are you doing, bro? You're deep. You're not playing the probabilities. You're like a poker guy who says, oh, I can win with any hand. I can win with a pair of sixes. No, because there's competition. People get so narcissistic that they think winning has nothing to do with the playing field. It does have to do with the playing field. You need sharp people. There's a reason Elon Musk moved to San Francisco. It had the most tech geniuses, and he found the PayPal mafia. He was one of 23 high IQ guys. So you need to go deep down the rabbit hole of the analysis of where to live. I think Scandinavia is in many ways a better place to live. The personality types, the hormonal, genetic propensities of people who live in Denmark, Sweden, Norway. They're more calm people. Dr. Helen Fisher told me, Tai, they're the highest serotonin group. They like to be settled down. So dating is much better there. Much better. The harsh truth in my 20s, I'm like, you ain't gonna find it in the big cities of America. In fact, the harsh truth about America is basically America doesn't have good big cities. It doesn't. But America has beautiful farmland, and America's a great place to make money in the cities. But in terms of overall good city where you get the good life, health, wealth, love, happiness, America doesn't have even one. Maybe San Diego. Maybe San Diego. If you want health, wealth, love, happiness, you got about one city in America where you could get wealth. Southern California, San Diego's a wealthy place. Health has got the best, it's generally voted the best weather in the world by meteorologists. Love, it's America, but maybe that one's and happiness is a very chill place. People surf. So Miami's not it. LA's not it. New York's not it. So for me, you can also split where you live. So like I make money in the U.S., big cities, Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, but I spend it in Scandinavia. I spend it in Brazil. So you're going to have to, most likely, as you make more money, you can split and get the best of different places. I have 3 different homes. I have a farm in the United States, which is truly America's great strength. America has the most beautiful farmland, fertile, productive, scenic. I got in the mountains. There's no place that has larger swaths of large, fertile land in the world with good weather than the United States. So I have a farm. That's my headquarters. Then large U.S. cities are the highest GDP locations in the world. So if Southern California and New York City was its own country, it's their 1.5 to 1.9 trillion GDP in one little region. If California was its own country, it'd be the 5th largest economy in the world. So when you're in that hunt for money, a large U.S. city is good. But when you're looking at love and happiness, unless you have a farm in the U.S., you want to be outside the U.S. You want to be in South America, Central America, some parts of Asia. I don't have as much experience in Africa, but I've been told there's some good spots there. But Europe is underrated for, we're Americans, so we often make fun of Europeans and they make fun of us. But make your money in America and spend it in Europe ain't bad philosophy. It's not a bad. If I could be 20 again, Be like, yo, die where you live matters. Split. Get the benefits of America, but do not spend 12 months a year in America. Never. America has a lot of strengths, but every place's strength has its weakness. I would also not spend 100% of my life in Scandinavia. There are some problems in Sweden, Denmark, or Norway, too. Nobody's perfect. So perceive and act as if you're somebody who's trying to get their cake and eat it too. They're trying to get both. You won't find it in one city. I can guarantee you. The only way, if I had to be in one place, it'd be on my farm. But make less money. So it depends on what phase you are in, right? Depends on the phase you're in.
For contemporary significance. To study our heritage from the past is not simply a waste of time, because most of that heritage is still with us. If not in the political and social circles of life, at least in the internal, subjective moods of our own existence. At a very early date, it became evident that the human being was in serious difficulty trying to understand where he was, what he was, and why he was. He looked around him and he saw a nature unfolding, but behind this nature, as he saw it, there must be something else, but he had no way of really trying to discover what it was. He was bound within the small area of his own life existence. His expectancy in those days was very little. It is sometimes estimated that the average human being in those early cave periods, life was probably about 10 years, maybe a few more. Many of them didn't reach majority at all. So it was a strange world with everything happening and no explanation for why it happened. Gradually, it became obvious that the human being had to have some type of internal existence which would carry with it faith and hope in his material life. Gradually, we find the rise of various beliefs, probably some of the earliest sort of shamanistic, the belief in spirits and ghosts, all this type of thing. All these believings came not from a carefully studied or planned exploration of nature. They came from a desperation of an individual or group of individuals struggling desperately for hope, to escape from loneliness, to no longer be an isolated creature in an unknown world. The human being was very much like a castaway on a desert island. He had no resources available to him except what he could contrive with his own ingenuity. As time went on, there was inevitably a demand for some type of organized faith, faith in realities that were not visible. But how was the primitive man going to analyze invisible realities? How is modern man going to analyze them? Actually, it all seems to have arisen within the person himself. The desperate need resulted in a kind of solution, a solution that was sufficient for the moment, and which it was always hoped would be improved and perfected in the course of time. This temporary solution is still the answer that we have to use. But with all our progress, with all our skills, with all our intellectualism, the individual is still lonely. He is still comparatively helpless in a world infinitely too great for him. Now he not only has to combat nature or adjust to its circumstances, but he must try to survive the complex situation set up by human nature in this little thing we call the earth. So altogether, our beginnings of faith, hope, and love lie in the desperate need for something that was superior to self, something that was stronger than we are, some ever-present help in time of trouble. Trouble was common, help was scarce. The individual went through countless miseries and misfortunes, but there had to be some hope, something to sustain the struggling creature in its long evolutionary path. There came up, of course, shamanism, which we find among the American Indians, the medicine priest with the rattle and the spells and the incantations, and with second sight and mysteries, who worked with the sick and gave hope of recovery. Then in other parts of the world, other types of help gradually evolved. But these different forms had their foundation in the human demand for hope. And the only way he could find hope, apparently, was through a strange contrivance with familiar and apparently hopeless elements. The American Indian in the Southwest, for instance, was very much concerned with creating charms, various good luck symbols, protective symbols. And yet he had no way of knowing, really, what would protect him, or where he would find anything that was sufficient. So he made a move that has become universal. He said, here is a pretty little pebble. Here is another pretty little pebble. These little petals and stones and flowers and so forth are pretty. They're nice. But in themselves, they can't do any particular good to us. But now comes magic. If we took two of these objects and put them together and tied them with sinew and painted something on them, they suddenly became medicine. Magic was bestowed upon a combination of factors, where it was not regarded as existing in the separate elements themselves. As a result of this, it gradually dawned on the human being that almost any combination of circumstances which he could contrive, if brought together, had a new meaning, a meaning that might contribute to his own survival. We know also that in most ancient peoples, there arose a class of medicine priests, of sacerdotal spiritual leaders. These became the foster parents of humanity. The simple people depended upon these leaders for hope. And it became obvious that for some mysterious reason, these leaders produced remarkable results. These people, these medicine priests, apparently performed miraculous cures. And even today, on some of the Indian reservations, white people in trouble sneak over the border and try to get an Indian medicine man to help them. They have more faith in him than they have in their own physician. Now, these problems perhaps are well explained in the Bible, where we find the definite statement that faith has helped to make us whole. Something to believe in, something that has hope, is a source of physical help. It helps us recover from mental ailments, from emotional stress, and from physical disease. Faith is a tremendously healing power, the only answer we have to the destructive force of fear. So from faith came a great development of beliefs and ideals. These were not always provable or demonstrable, but that was not important. It wasn't whether or not you could scientifically sustain them. The real answer was that people accepted them, believed in them, deposited in them hope for the future, faith in the power of something to protect. As time went on and religions and philosophies became more complicated, it was inevitable that efforts should be made to rationalize faith, to bring it under the control of reason. It was apparent that if the mind supported the faith, it was stronger. And so we have all kinds of philosophies, mysticisms, esotericisms, and every type of intellectual interpretation of natural phenomena. We have it today. But today we are in a little difficulty. Knowing that faith basically is the very cornerstone of survival, we find that many forms of knowledge, particularly scientific knowledge, exist largely to destroy faith. They want to take away from us the belief in those very invisible principles upon which we have learned to depend for peace of soul and peace of mind and peace of heart. So in this confusion, a great many persons have lost their spiritual orientation. They have lost their ability to accept the fact that there is a universal good, a universal reality, that life is purposed, that there are reasons for things. And as gradually the sciences limit perspective and force the individual into a constant acceptance of material things as the only realities, as this goes on, faith dims, hope fades away, and the individual is reduced to a state from which he escaped ages ago by rising above the level of materialistic, primitive existence. Now, in the course of all this problem, certain facts of human life became increasingly obvious, and these facts of life are perhaps somewhat summarized in our relationship with the mystery of death. It is a problem that the primitive man never could understand. He tried to dramatize this mystery. He tried to glorify it. He placed a treasury of art, beauty, and wealth in the tombs of his kings. He did everything to imagine that man after death lived in a beautiful land, but he had no way of proving it. He had no way of justifying it other than by faith. But this faith was so important, so desperately needed, that gradually a new type of interpretation of life was built upon faith. Faith justified, not rationalized. It became obvious that there had to be some reason for existence. Materialism destroys that reason. Idealism supports that reason. And faith lingers and clings desperately to support, to something to make things better. Omar summarizes it in one of the quatrains when he says, "Strange is it not, that of those myriad few before us passed the gates of darkness through, not one returned to tell us of the way that to discover we must travel to." This pessimism was something that sickened. Pessimism is always a disease. It never amounts to anything constructive. But pessimism is an inevitable result of a hard, sharp look at circumstances without inner enlightenment to sustain us. So the problem of building this inner light can become very important to all of us. In the course of time, the ancients developed a way of tying divinity closer to humanity. It was rather obvious to most people, even when they were comparatively savage, that no deity could listen to all the prayers of mankind, could listen to the 2 or 3 billion prayers that go up now every day to some gracious providence for help, for something to build hope upon, something by which the individual escapes the isolation of his own insufficiency. So gradually the invisible world was organized, not by proof, but by necessity. This organization did, however, result in visualization. For the dreams that the individual had about the invisible world behind him and beyond him gradually came through in sleep patterns, resulting in an elaborate symbolism of inner survival. This is found in practically all the esoteric arts and sciences of antiquity that have descended to us. They have developed symbolisms of hope, symbolisms of survival, symbolisms of transformation by which the suffering and ills of society can be transcended. In this particular phase of the subject, therefore, we have gradually enlarged the concept of God. We enlarged it in one way and reduced it in another. Certainly, we do not have the thousands of deities that arose in Oriental religions, but we do have a realization that there has to be something between man and God besides space. That this space, this interval of quality between our state and the divine state simply cannot be a vacuum. That in some mysterious way, the divine operates in the mortal existence. And in order to operate, it must have some instruments of operation. So we gradually developed in ancient times a belief in tutelary deities, godlings of various kinds, deities of agriculture. The Romans had gods that lived under the kitchen floor to take care of food. The Egyptians had their deities who plowed the fields of Amentet after death. Everywhere there were godlings and spirits that came to help or to be present. Folklore is loaded with these concepts. Where did they come from? They were not really simply projects of imagination. They were the visualizations of hope, of faith, of the realization of a need, and an inner conviction that there must be somewhere something to meet that need. Now, we're talking about long ago, but we are not talking about things that no longer exist. The needs of our ancestors are still exactly the same as our own. We have made practically no progress in the area of the fulfillment of internal needs. We have gradually tried to assume that they did not exist. We have tried to limit existence to a single life. We have tried to assume that everything is accident and that all traits are hereditary. We do not have any solution to the great hunger of the human being for inner strength, for the power to meet the pressures of a world around him constantly betraying the world within him. In this emergency, we find, therefore, in every major religion of the world, a development of intervening deities, beings of various qualities that existed between the final ultimate theology and the common mortal life of man. In Christian philosophy and religion, these have generally been called angels or archangels. They were messengers of the divine. These, as messengers, became very important. They brought the legends and mysteries of faiths necessary to the fulfillment of spiritual realities. There also arose the negative counterpart of these. For as the messengers came from above to bring light to man, so below human beings rose to high degrees of spiritual development, and saints and heroes began to intercede for human beings before the throne of deity. So a network of intercessions was created, a network of hope finally more or less justified by a network of speculations. Now, as time went on, these speculations became more and more firmly established in the human mind, until in many instances these are no longer speculations. They are now traditional facts that have come to us through the wisdom of our ancestors. Now, maybe these facts are more factual than we like to realize, because actually our best instrument to discover the facts of things must lie within ourselves. It is our own insight that is the nearest to truth that we can ever have. We can't find this truth out in the desert somewhere unless it stimulates insight, unless something comes from within ourselves the larger work cannot be perfected. In some cases, we have the rise of various orders of deities, such as those which we find among the American Indians again. And even now, in their religious rites and rituals, the Ketchinas come from the mountains. And the human being wearing a mask and with certain ritualistic accompaniments is considered to be a temporary god. And this faith is still held firmly in the American Southwest. It is held in Asia among the shamanism of Mongolia. It is still held in many parts of the East, even among highly civilized and highly skeptical peoples. The belief, the realization of the mask cult is very strong and probably will be for a long time to come. I remember when I was up in the northern end of India towards Darjeeling, that a group of Tibetan dancers came down to give a performance for the strange visitors from afar. Among the dancers was a little boy, probably 5 or 6 years old. Everybody loved that little boy. He was so charming and had such a quaint way of living and thinking, and wore the cutest clothes imaginable. He was like a doll to most of the people who saw him, who came from outside of India. Then came the time for the dance, and the little boy put on a mask with a grimacing face on it, and decked himself out with some regalia, and started to join the dancers. And in the course of the dance, this little fellow danced over towards the visitors, the tourists. They immediately scattered and hid. The moment the mask was on him, those who knew the little boy were still afraid of him. This is a subconscious situation that apparently we have not been able to cure even now. So the masks appear in Egypt, in the temple rituals. They appear in the dramas of Greece. They appear in the dances and mysteries of Tibet, Mongolia, and Bhutan. They are still used in Japan and China. They are found among the Incas. They were a part of the regalia of the Aztecs and the people of Central America. Masked dancers and costume dancers are still found in many parts of Europe. The whole situation is that with the change of perspective, where something that isn't normal or common is introduced, immediately there are strange inner acceptances. Something happens, and the individual is no longer oriented to the materialism which has gradually crept into his nature. Now, in the course of this same procedure, we have had a great roaming around of the mind in folklore, in emblemism, in symbolism, in alchemy, in Kabbalah, many of these things, where the individual, using ordinary elements, placing them in new combinations, causes them to become revelations of something superior or more important. Now, in the midst of all of this, we come to the classic Greeks. And in the classic case, of course, the most outstanding example of something is the spirit guide of Socrates. Socrates had a spirit that was born with him, according to his own statement. And this spirit was called a daimon. Our word demon comes from it, but it is a use that was made after it was assumed that all these pagan deities were devils. Actually, the daemon was not an evil spirit, but a friend, a guide, and a counselor. And wherever Socrates was in danger or difficulty, his spirit came to him. The daemon or guardian appeared, and he writes about it, discusses it, and tells of the examples of its presence. When, however, the time came for Socrates to die, when it was ordered that he take the hemlock and die of poisoning, he says that his spirit left him weeping. The spirit was no longer with him. Iamblichus, in his study of the mysteries of the Egyptians and Chaldeans, describes in detail these familiar spirits. And gradually we find more and more discussion of them, and Paracelsus, von Hohenheim, and many of the mystics of the Middle Ages recognized them. They were also recognized by the early church, that there was something that came along and sort of protected and helped and guided and became an invisible parent to a visible orphan, not necessarily because he lost his family, but because he was an orphan as far as his inner life was concerned. He was as a child left without parent. He was alone in a world, and he needed mothering. He needed someone to lean on. He needed something to strengthen and protect him in his efforts to live a good life. And so out of this came the concept of the guardian angel. The guardian angel, according to the stories about it that have come down to us, came into birth with the person itself. The angel came and remained with the person throughout life. And then when the person died, the angel appeared to testify before the throne of deity of the virtues of the person it had protected through the years. Now, this concept was never officially part of the Catholic or early Christian church, but it was said to be of the mind of the church. That is, it was accepted. A feast day was set aside for it, and as early as in the 4th and 5th centuries, it was discussed by the early church theologians. The direct source of the concept may have been the various nymphs and spirits of the Greeks. Also, the various guardian spirits and beings that protected the Egyptian living and dead. The direct form of it seems to have originated in Chaldea or Babylon. But there is no religion in the world of any importance today that does not have angels. They are found on the Buddhist monuments and in the beautiful Buddhist paintings and in the various statuary. They are found in China, in India, in Burma. They were very important in Persia. They occur frequently in the literature of the Orthodox Jewish faith. They are part of the Christian story, and they find them arising wherever the human being has been in the urgent need of help. They are a very essential part of the basic philosophy of Islam. So everywhere there are the beliefs in these beings.